Welcome to Group Talk. 4 shows, 1 podcast from the Small Group Network focusing on topics relevant to small group ministries. Whether you're in a church of 100 or 10,000, whether you're a volunteer or staff, we want to support, encourage, and equip you to lead well. So relax, listen, and enjoy Leadership Journey with Bill Search.
Well, welcome back to the Leadership Journey. I'm your host, Bill Search, and recently I had the incredible opportunity to present at the Right Now Media Conference down in Dallas, Texas. Although, depending on where you are listening from, it might be over in Texas or up to Texas. I'm in Oklahoma, so it's down to Texas for me. But anyhow, I spoke at this conference, did a couple workshops, and one in particular I thought would be very helpful to this crew. So if you don't mind, I thought I'd just share the cliff notes from that presentation. And this month, I'm going to hit the first 5, and then the next month, I'm going to hit the next 5. And if you saw the title of this particular podcast session, you know that this is entitled Keys to Navigating the Inevitable Challenges Facing Small Groups. All small groups, from time to time, are going to face some or all of these problems. And this is true whether you lead a small group as an individual or whether you lead the small group ministry as the overseer of it, or if you're a participant like a coach or an associate pastor of groups, depending on the size of your church. So in my 20 plus years of experience, both being in a small group, as a participant, as a leader, I lead a couple small groups right now. And so these are experiences that I've had both at that kind of frontline level, but also as a ministry leader, one who's charged with the oversight of the ministry. So I thought I'd share these with those at that conference. And the more I thought about it, I hope it's helpful to you as well. So there's 10 of them, and we're going to hit 5 this session, and then the next session we're going to hit part 2. So buckle up. So I got to get through these pretty quick. What I noticed through the years is that there are 3 types of challenges. Again, whether you lead a small group or you oversee the ministry, there are 3 types of challenges that you're going to encounter. The first one is everyday issues. The second is occasional issues. And the third is rare issues. So if you're catching that, if you're listening and you're not able to write that down, it's just the stuff that comes at you every day. There's the things that come from time to time. And then there's the ones that come very rarely. And so what do you do? So let's dig into these. We're going to hit the first 5 in this session. So we're going to hit everyday issues. We're going to cover that one, and we're going to cover one occasional issue. So ready? Everyday issue number 1. No one will lead a group. Now, this is probably more for the person who oversees the group ministry than the group leader. However, if you're in a small group where multiplication is a big deal, where they preach that a lot, and your overseer, your coach, pastor's like, hey, make sure you're raising up other leaders in the group. And so you're doing your best to try to do that, and no one will step forward, right? If that is your story, that's not an uncommon story. That's an everyday issue. And so what does a ministry do when they have a problem where people want to be in a small group, but nobody will lead the small group? So here's a few things that I have tried through the years. And so, by the way, when we do these, I really would love to see your comments in our Facebook group, as well as comments on the podcast evaluation and so forth. Just love to get feedback and your thoughts. So here's what I do. No one will lead a group. I've employed the host strategy. That's big at Saddleback. They kind of pioneered it. But that idea, if you're not familiar, is somebody who says, look, I don't want to lead a group, but they can meet in my house. I'll host it. Okay, great. If you'll host it here, here's some material. Just, pull some chairs in a circle, and here's a list of questions. You're not leading it. You're just hosting it. And it takes really the pressure off the idea of leading. Because a lot of times people won't lead because they think, well, I'm not spiritual enough. I'm not mature enough. And a lot of times that is true. But they can host it. They can open up their lives and their homes, and in the process, God can meet them where they're at, and you as the ministry leader can come alongside them and get them where they need to be. So host strategy is a good one. There's an old-fashioned one. I always love the term for this one. It's called a turbo group. If you're not familiar, just Google turbo small group. There's a gazillion resources out there, I bet. But turbo groups are just, if nobody will lead, but you go, all these people can lead. Why won't they lead? Because of one reason or another, one barrier or another. What I do is just circle up a group of people that you think can lead and give them a small group kind of experience, train them in the small group setting and let them know up front, here's what I hope happens. A fair warning, I was in a turbo group. It was the first group experience I had in the first church that my wife and I, newly married, started attending. And it was our first small group experience as a couple. And we were all supposed to lead our own small groups. There was only like one or two couples in the group that maybe weren't, quote unquote, leadership potential, I suppose you could say that. But there was a couple that had rotated back from the mission field. And then there's Karen and me, my wife and me. And, I classically trained in Bible and theology and was just sitting there in the pews. So, I could have led a group, but I wasn't leading a group. The guy who was actually leading the group was the vice president of a small Christian publishing company. So he was very, very qualified. He and his wife were both alum of a prominent Christian college. And there was another couple in there that were really, really strong on fire for the Lord. And so the idea was we were going to be a turbo group, and our turbo group lasted as a small group for like 2 more years. So it doesn't always work, but it's a neat idea when it works. And then the other thing you can do, and this is something I experimented with vastly, I adapted what I learned from Saddleback and what I learned from churches like North Point and their group link event. And then we did adaptations for our own church, and we did a connection event. So this works primarily well in larger churches. I'll be honest, small churches may not have the critical mass to do this one. But in larger churches, 1,000, 2,000 people, or if your church is like 500 and you're just brand new with small groups, you've never done it before, you can do a connection event. You start wearing your people out. I've found personally in churches of less than about 2,000, after a while, the people who are going to come to a connection event have come, and then the rest is not people who are going to come. So the attendance of those drops precipitously unless you have a constant influx of brand new people. So you can always count on me to tell you the truth. So just so you know. All right. So that's a host and connection event. That's just everyday issue number one. No one will lead. And if you encounter that one, just know that that's not a new thing. That problem's been around since the first century of the church. And you can actually look in the early church fathers and some of the apostolic writings, and you can actually see it in there. They don't say no one will lead a small group. They use different vernacular, but the gist is there that there's always people who have needs, and there's not enough people to lead. So everyday issue number one was no one will lead a group. Everyday issue number two, people won't come to my group. I am a leader of a group. I have a great group of people. There's no reason they can't come, but they don't come. And lest you think you're alone, that happens to me in my small group. I've got a family right now. They don't even think twice. I don't even think they have a conscience about it. I love them. They're great, great people. They don't listen to this podcast, so I can tell you. I won't tell you their names, but just a couple of weeks ago, we were having a small group. They said they were coming. They were actually bringing, I think, beverages or something. And they had an assignment of what they were going to bring. And the wife thought the husband was going to text. The husband, I guess, either forgot or thought the wife was going to text. So like 15, 20 minutes into our small group, we're still waiting for them to come. And finally, my 16-year-old son texted their 16-year-old son, only to discover that they weren't planning to come. They had made the decision at 2 or 3 in the afternoon or something, which frustrated me. And if that sort of thing happens to you, then you are not alone. So what do you do? Well, not a new problem, been around since the early church. I, as a weirdo, for fun, at night, I read from the Ante-Nicene Fathers. I recently acquired a multi-volume set. In fact, if you're able to watch this, I don't know if we're recording this, but right over my left shoulder, so it'd be to your right, I don't know which way you're looking at this thing, is the whole set there, Ante-Nicene, Nicene, and Post-Nicene Fathers. It's Pretty beautiful set. Anyhow, I'm only in volume 1 because it's something like 40,000 pages. It's going to be something I read for the rest of my life. But anyhow, I digress. I'm reading for fun the early church, Antonicene Fathers, first couple centuries. And one of the themes that keeps coming up in their writings, Ignatius talks about it, Polycarp talks about it, that people aren't coming to church. And this is during persecution, right? So there's a reason people might not want to come to church. They might not want to die, and they might not want to get arrested. They might not want to starve to death. And they're like, the person who doesn't come to church is arrogant, and they have spoken judgment unto themselves. It's good kind of King James-ish reading. But anyhow, not a new problem. In other words, I just want you to be comforted in that. I don't want you to think you're weird. I'm not weird. You're not weird. So the first thing is to find out why. I mean, before we get judgy about why people aren't coming, is to make a phone call. Don't make any assumptions. Don't gossip about the problem. Talk to the people and find out what's going on. Maybe it's all legitimate. A lot of times it is. Sometimes it's not. You have to address that. And then when you pick up the phone, I had a call with a group participant not that long ago, not the same people I'm talking about. And the person said to me, no, we're committed to the group. And I, over the phone or in person, I said, no, you're not. I had met with the person in person. I said, you're not. And they were kind of taken aback at my brutal honesty. Now, if you're into Enneagram, I'm an 8, so I don't usually have too much trouble telling people what I think about things. But I just, in that moment, was kind of frustrated. So I was like, well, you aren't committed to this thing, so you should become committed to this thing. And then he made a vow. I'm like, geez, now I'm committed. So we'll see. But anyhow, find out why, because usually there's some reason to it that isn't just, there's a better football game on or something. And then set a calendar and stick to the plan. This one's a hard one because you sometimes think, well, if we don't have critical mass, we're just not going to do it. And you have to decide for you what critical mass is. I can't tell you what that number is. It could be, if you're a couple leading a group and you have another couple show up, have the group with the 4 of you. Maybe that's the plan. Maybe you just do some adjustments with who's there. Don't worry about the people who have dropped behind. If you have half your group present, you don't have to get too worked up about the other people falling behind. We like to kid ourselves into thinking everybody remembers where we're at in a study, and they're not. They don't usually remember. So set the calendar, stick to the plan, and then release people who miss regularly. I mean, if somebody just don't come, they just come when it suits them, then just let them go and let them know. You could do one of two things. You could either just go, hey, obviously this isn't working for you, and that's okay. Come back to us when it will. Or you could just change when your group meets, not tell them, and just see if they notice. I'm just kidding about that last one. Probably don't do that one. That one would be very, very rude. If I suggested that, my wife would hit me right now if she was in the room. So that's everyday issue number 2. People won't come to my group. Happens all the time. All right. Everyday issue number 3. Let me back up. I saw in the Facebook group, somebody had commented like, hey, I'm having a hard time with people coming to meet my small group, and different people were making comments, and I never know how to take the comments. Some people are like, well, when I serve a meal, then people are there. And my wife's a gourmet chef. Okay, she cooks a meal for our small group every single time we meet, and it's fantastic food. I eat better when our small group meets, and I always eat good. So just for the record on that. And you know what? Let's be honest about what works and what doesn't work. And when we're on that Facebook group, I'm not saying the person who made that comment is not honest, just to be clear. Just if you're listening to this right now, I am not calling you out in this format. I'm not saying that. I'm just encouraging us to, one, ask our questions and participate on that Facebook group. And let's put the thoughts on there, but let's be 100% honest. God doesn't like it when we're not honest, and it's not helpful to one another if we're not honest. So if something is working for you, then be very upfront about how it's working for you. But don't. That's not a place for philosophical idealism, if that makes sense. So again, I'm not calling anybody out. I'm not criticizing anybody. So if you listen to this right now and you're like, it does work for me, that was my comment, I am so glad for you. So, all right.
Hey, what's up, Small Group Network? Jason Banzoff here, Group Talk producer, and it's the middle of November. Now, I'm sure you've been gearing up for what's ahead for 2022, but I'm also pretty certain you're looking for some continued learning in your plan as well. We'll look no further because the Lobby Gathering is the place for you to be. Join us February 22nd to the 24th. Located at Saddleback Church's stunning Rancho Capistrano Retreat Center, the Lobby Gathering is an out-of-the-box small group networking event where we create environments for small group point people to relax and connect together in casual conversations about small group ministry, much like they would in a church lobby over a cup of coffee. Now, whether you're a beginner or a veteran small group point person, you will have an equal voice in each circle of conversation. You will also get to hear and learn from the brightest small group point people from around the world. Visit smallgroupnetwork.com/conferences to sign up today. Again, that's smallgroupnetwork.com/conferences. Now, we haven't gathered like this since 2020, so be part of this regathering celebration. Now back to Leadership Journey.
Everyday issue number 3, group is stale and boring. Have you ever had that? Have you ever had a group meeting? You're like in the middle of it as you're leading it. You're like, this is so bad. This is so bad. I preach and teach sometimes. And sometimes in the midst of a teaching, I'm like, oh, this is not good. It's worse, trust me, when it's just you up there. All right. So this is a normal issue that groups face. I mean, not every group. It's like a movie, or pick your favorite TV series. Not every episode's like a cheering winner kind of thing. So what do you do? Here's a few things you can do. Mix up your meeting location or format. If you're used to meeting in at your house or someone's house, then rotate around where you meet. If you're used to having the same, like, hey, we do an icebreaker and then we do a Bible study and then we do prayer, then start with your prayer time and mix it up. Do your prayer time and then icebreaker or something. End with an icebreaker. That'd be kind of weird, but it'd be hilarious. I've never done that, just for the record. So, and then rotate leadership. You might always lead. Maybe you do this now, but if you don't, and the group is getting kind of a little bit meh, then maybe rotate leadership. It's interesting how different people lead. You might also, by the way, answer question number 1 of when nobody will lead and you can't find anybody to lead. You might find some new leaders if you rotate leadership. Choose a different style of study. You might, in your group, you might always watch, for instance, video, and that's great. But if the group's getting kind of stale and fuzzy, listen to somebody else that does video. If you pick a different teacher, you make sure you get this approved with your pastor or director, because you want to make sure you're not introducing some kind of crazy loon. There's all kinds of video teaching out there now. Thank you, YouTube. You're so thoughtful to provide it for us. Anyhow. Choose a different speaker, choose a different style. If you're used to video, go to inductive Bible study. If you're used to inductive Bible study, try one of those crazy videos from time to time. Just mix it up a little bit. If you always do a book study, that is, you read the latest thing that a celebrity preacher has written, and they're all so good. I'm sorry. Did you catch the sarcasm? But some of them are really good. Okay. So, like, for instance, one of my ones that I've just heard great things about, I haven't read, is Derwin Gray's new book on the Lord's Prayer. It was just, I've just heard bits about it, and it makes me want to read it. And that one might be a good one for your small group, is something along those lines, where you grab a book that has some claw into the scripture. Kyle Idleman is one of my favorite authors. I used to work for him, or with him, I should say. I worked for the church. I didn't work for him. But Kyle's written a bunch of books. He has a great book on Hebrews that has a yellow cover. I can't remember the name of it right now, but you can easily find it. It's really good. And that one's the type thing. Anyhow, you get the gist. And then have a meeting of just icebreakers and games. If you're getting kind of stale, just have a party. Throw a party. Have a dinner. Grab one of those cubes of questions. Just pre-select some questions, because I have a bunch of these. I love icebreakers. I love them. Like, for instance, here's the best icebreaker in the world. If you could see any concert in the history of humanity, who would you go see? Isn't it the best one? There's not a finer icebreaker question than that one. It's my favorite because I like music. And depending on my mood, I change it. Like right now, I'd go see Miles Davis. That'd be awesome. See Miles Davis. But if I'm in a real spiritual mood, I'd go see like the angels serenading the shepherds outside Bethlehem. But right now I'm in a Miles Davis mood. So anyhow, have a meeting of icebreakers or games. And the reason you want to pre-select your icebreakers is some of them are a little like not safe for families. Just so you know, I've got a bunch of icebreakers, and I was surprised what made it past some editors. Everyday issue number 4, my pastor doesn't care about groups. Raise your hand if that is how you feel. May not be true, but it's how you feel. You feel that your pastor doesn't care about groups. I was a senior pastor for 3.5 years. And among the various roles that I've served in the church, that was the toughest one I ever had. It was tough. And I'm glad I did it because it taught me a lot about that role. I used to think to myself, this idiot doesn't know what he's doing. And then I was a senior pastor, and I'd have the same thought. I'd sit at my desk, and I would literally think, this idiot doesn't know what he's doing, and the idiot is me. So just give the guy a break. Or if you have a woman senior pastor, give her a break. Give your pastor a break, okay? There's a lot going on in that person's mind. And along with it, I'd say celebrate your opportunity, because here's just something you should know. Sometimes when senior pastors have very strong opinions about ministries, they tend to get involved in those ministries, and then they tend to direct those ministries, sometimes from afar and sometimes from email and memo and text. And sometimes you're better off having some room to run. And if your pastor really legitimately is like, hey, it's fine. What you're doing is great. I think it's swell. I don't care. Then enjoy the freedom that comes with that, because it gives you a real chance to pioneer something and build something from the ground up. And maybe as something builds some momentum within through the power of the Holy Spirit and the way you've done your deal, it's possible your senior pastor will see the good that's being done and go, hey, could we meet and talk about that? I really like what I'm hearing there. So celebrate that opportunity. Do what you can with what you have is what I'm getting at. You have some opportunity, so do what you can with what you have. Do not, and I'm just going to tell you right now, if you get nothing else out of this point of my pastor doesn't care about groups, do not, ready? Do not. Are you clear on this? This is what you are never, ever, ever to do. Do not judge or complain. Do not judge your pastor, and do not complain. If you feel that you must judge and complain, then get yourself a very flammable journal. Write down all of your judgmental comments against your pastor and all your complaints, and then go in your backyard and burn it. Unless you're in California, the whole state's flammable. Don't burn it in the backyard. Burn it in your fireplace if you have one of those. If you don't have one of those, shred it. If you don't have one of those, don't put it in a journal, okay? And here's why. One is you really don't know what's going around in your pastor's mind. And then if you begin to complain about your pastor to people in your church, guess what? Your pastor will find out, even if you're in a big church. If you're a leader in a big church, your pastor will hear it, because this is how it happens. You tell somebody you trust, oh, this is what this pastor, this is what, Tom just doesn't care at all about this ministry. This is Acts 2 kind of stuff. This is the early church, and Tom doesn't care. But you've told a very trusted friend, and your trusted friend makes it a prayer concern with their trusted friend, who then shares it with their trusted friend, who happens to be Tom's wife. It happens. I mean, just know that there's a reason the Bible says don't gossip, not because it's sin, but because it's suicidal. Okay, it is sin, by the way, but besides it being sin, it's just a stupid thing to do. So do not judge or complain. And then if this is like a big burning deal, you're like, my pastor doesn't care. I care a lot about this, and my pastor actually just doesn't like it at all. Then move on. You might need to move on, and that's kingdom redeployment. It's not dishonorable. I mean, Paul and Barnabas split up over John Mark, and they found a place to be friends later. But I'd say sometimes those tensions are the way that God uses our humanity for something. So anyhow, I hope that's helpful. All right, occasional issue number 5, and then we'll take a break. Occasional issue number 5. This is not an everyday issue. This one comes from time to time. A loss of vision for the ministry. You lose a vision for the ministry. So what do you do when you lose a vision for the ministry? It happens, again, from time to time. And running the same game plan for a while, and you get kind of tired of the game plan, or everybody else gets tired of it. Something that was super successful before becomes less successful. All right, what do? Pray. Pray. Pray, really, I should have put it at the front of all of these issues, but pray, take it before the Lord. Lord, I'm just struggling with my vision for this whole thing. Let him know. He knows already, so just be honest with him. Ask him for a new, fresh vision. Read books. Read books on education and read books on small groups. I've gone on eBay and bought a bunch of old small group books just because I think it's kind of interesting to see how none of us have written anything new. I've written 3 books on small groups, and I've pretty much found most everything I've written in other books without even knowing they were there. Just to be clear, I haven't plagiarized. Just to be clear. I just didn't even know, oh, wow, that's almost common knowledge. I mean, it feels that way at times. So, but read books, because there are some incredible, if nothing else, it might be a spur in your side. If I can borrow the metaphor from the book of Hebrews, it can jolt you. Our good friend Steve, the grand poobah of all this, he's written a handful of books that are very, very helpful. There's other big swingers out there when it comes to hitting the ball with the big bat. That's what I mean by swingers, just to be clear, in case you've heard that used other ways. I don't mean it the way it's used in the world. Sorry, I used that. But back to taking a big hit here. I mean, well, that's even the wrong metaphor, isn't it? I'm really struggling with my metaphors. Sorry about that. All right, read books. You get my gist. Steve's written some great books. If you run like a real clean, simple model, North Point, Bill Willits has got a great book on groups. If you don't do if you don't do anything else in your church, Ryan Hartwig's got a great book on small groups. I've written a couple things that may or may not be helpful. All right, network with other groups, pastors. This is one of the cool things we have with the small group network. We are a network, and it's a highly relational network. So network with other pastors, network on our Facebook group, huddle up with other people in your community who will help you form those huddles. I mean, you can announce it on the small group page or talk with our coordinator for all those huddles, because there's early days of ministry. My first few years, I wouldn't have known what I was doing if it wasn't for 2 or 3 other prominent churches in our region that shared what they were learning. And from it, I have forged some lifelong friends. I have one friend in ministry, a guy named Juno Smalley, fabulous guy. And it was through one of those networks that I met Juno, and we have been friends for 20 years now, more than. So it's just a neat deal to be able to forge those relationships. So attend a conference would be another idea. We've got our lobby coming up in February. Hopefully COVID holds back so we can do that thing live, because it's one of my favorite things I go to, because there's some content, but really the real big deal is the conversations around the fire pit, and you get to just meet fabulous other people. And so attend a conference. Like I said, I gave this thing at the Right Now Media Conference. That's a good conference. It's not specifically small groups, but it's a good size one, and you get to meet a lot of the people who go to it are connected to groups, because that's how they know of Right Now Media. And then if you come next year, make sure you swing by and say hi to me. I'd like to meet you. And then talk to other leaders at your church. Be honest with, maybe it's your pastor or other small group leaders, something. If you're charged with the vision for this thing and you're struggling with the vision, just be honest and share with the other leaders in your church. I am struggling with the vision for this deal. And so all right, those are the first 5 of navigating the inevitable challenges that face small groups. And join me next time as I wrap it up with the final 5 of the 10 inevitable challenges facing small groups and what to do about it. All right. Hopefully this has been helpful. I've had a great time with you. I look forward to next time. Have a great week.
Thank you for listening to Group Talk. We invite you to subscribe to our podcast through iTunes and get new episodes downloaded automatically. Also, if you enjoy this program, please take a few minutes to give us a positive rating on iTunes so that other small group point people can find us more easily. We encourage you to visit our website at smallgroupnetwork.com to access our library of free resources, connect to a huddle with other small group ministry leaders in your area, read our blog articles, or join us on our Facebook group. Don't forget to use the hashtag SGNet when engaging with your social media channels. Thank you for your support.